Looking at the Nationals farm system, there is one player that sticks out the most as the most important player for the Washington Nationals organization, and that is number one overall pick, Eli Willits.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I am your host, Ryan Clary. You can find me on Twitter at RyanClary11, as we are again part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team each and every single day. But later on in today's program, I want to get into this. The Nationals, the MacKenzie Gore stuff is like so confusing at this point, but the New York Mets, they made a big deal yesterday. I don't think the Nationals will be trading MacKenzie Gore. In fact, I'll go on record saying that they will not trade MacKenzie Gore this offseason. Nats fans are going to have to wait, and I'll explain why, and why I also think it's the wrong decision later on in the show today. But we start off discussing the most important Washington Nationals players outside of the Washington Nationals, meeting their top prospects. And for me, this got to be number one overall pick, Eli Willits. So let's talk about Eli Willits on today's program. And the reason why I say he is the most important prospect for the Washington Nationals, it's not just because he's the number one overall pick. This is because the Nationals have put all their chips on the table, thinking that this is going to be the best player from the 2026 or 2025 MLB draft class. And when you originally draft Eli Willits, listen, is he the most talented player in the draft? I don't know. I guess we could probably discuss that, but even then, that is irrelevant to the conversation. Eli Willits is a very talented player who, in my opinion, was definitely a top 3 talent in the MLB draft. And we talk about ceilings all the time here. Eli Willits has a very high ceiling. And when you get into the player of really what he could be, number one, in his first half season, or whatever you're going to call it, he played 15, 20 games down in low A Fredericksburg, batted north of 300, put the ball in play, didn't really strike out, and looked really good defensively. You kind of saw what he was about, and you saw that this is someone who obviously could be a very good talent moving forward. But the reason why he is the most important for the Nationals organization right now is you look at this new regime. Paul Taboni, Ani Colombi, Devin Pearson, the top decision makers, Justin Horowitz coming over from the Pirates, all these top decision makers, you bring them in here to do one thing, and that is to develop talent. When you have the number one overall pick, and I don't care what draft you are in, Eli Willits was the number one overall pick in the 2025 MLB draft. This is someone that the Nationals should absolutely bank on being a star player moving forward. And I think that the Nationals right now, you are going to look at this farm system and say, well, they do have some talent in there, but also they've got a lot of room to work with. And I think that Eli Willits is clearly the number one guy that people should be raving about and clamoring for and seeing what he does best. I'm intrigued to see the way that the Nationals are really going to kind of jump this guy's kind of rebuild or retool, whatever you want to say, when it comes to Eli Willits. This is someone who's got all the talent in the world. 60 grade arm, a 60 grade field. He is a 60 grade runner, a 60 grade hit tool. He's got a 45 grade power tool, and that's probably the weakest tool in his bag, literally and not figuratively. But I do think that there is some room to grow as far as power goes for Eli Willits. You look at a lot of guys coming out of the high school ranks, especially someone who is so young. Like, for instance, Eli Willits was down in Fredericksburg as a 17-year-old. He couldn't even go to a 7-Eleven to buy a lottery ticket. Just keep that in perspective for a second. While he's playing minor league baseball, the rest of his friends are still in high school at 17 years old. Like, he should be in the second semester of his senior year of high school at this point. That's how young he is. So keep that in the back of your head here and just kind of stick with me for a second. The expectations for Eli Willits obviously should be high, and they will be high. But this might take a little bit of time to really take off. And I think the taking off for Eli Willits is going to look like a couple of different things. Number one, the offensive talent is clearly there. You see the hit tool, you can see the probable power that could come down the road, and you see the fact that this guy can steal bases and he's a great defender. But looking at the stat sheet already, like when you have a 757 OPS in your first 15 games and you bat 300 and you're getting on base, like people are going to have some expectations for you being that number one pick. But also these numbers probably will not pop early on in his days down in the minor leagues. You might have to be just a little bit patient when it comes to seeing the progress of Eli Willits. I think the expectations for him should be number one pick expectations. Like, this is someone that you should expect big things from, and you should expect hopefully an all-star caliber player down the road. But this is also a process that the Nationals are going to have to follow. If you remember this past year's draft, you fire Mike Rizzo a week before the draft. Mike DeBartolo is the one running it. He is the interim GM at that point. He made the final decision, and they ultimately decided to go with Eli Willits. It was actually reported a few weeks ago that the Nationals called like 6 different players, and I believe the story goes is they were just hoping as if the cheapest option would say yes. That's kind of what the MLB draft is today. You do not necessarily take the top talent. You take someone who is going to give you the financial flexibility and quote unquote cut a deal with them, especially at that number one overall pick. And Eli Willits was that. He is very talented. He is the number 8 prospect as far as shortstop goes in Major League Baseball. And I think he will probably work his way inside that top 5 as the season progresses here. But the expectations at first should be a little bit lower than what you may anticipate for being a number 1 overall pick. This does not mean that Willits will be some sort of bust. This does not mean that Willits will be some bad player. This is going to be a 5-6 WAR a year kind of player, in my opinion. Someone who's going to bat like 280, 290 in the major leagues, a similar hitting profile to maybe, let's say, a Danny Espinosa or a Ian Desmond type of player. And I really like what Willits brings to the table. I think that his ceiling is obviously much higher than an Ian Desmond or a Danny Espinosa. And I think that Eli Willits will be a great player. And I think that the Nationals will do a great job developing him. But this will be their first test within this new organization here. Like, you have the number 1 overall pick. You take Eli Willits, and let's see if you can now develop him. Because this old regime, I was not too confident in that. And as soon as the Nationals moved off of Mike Rizzo before the draft, I was ready to say, okay, if the Nationals get this new player development regime under wraps, and if they can understand that you need data and analytics that goes into developing talent, then you can take an Eli Willits, or you can take a Seaver King like they did in 2024 and hope that you can develop them. But the way that this old regime was, I didn't really have too much confidence in these selections. I think Eli Willits is a different case than Seaver King. Willits is a more ready prospect, a more toolsy prospect, more defined, and I think that some people would describe him as. But Eli Willits is very important to this team. He is obviously the most important prospect in the national system. And I think if you were to ask Paul Taboni or Devin Pearson or Ani Colombi, they would all say that Eli Willits would be the number 1 guy for them and really the guy that they will be watching moving forward. And I think he'll be a good case study to see how this player development regime is, because as we all know, the Nationals need it. And I think that's what they're going to get this offseason. But next, I want to get into this. I don't think the Nationals will trade MacKenzie Gore after all. Not just like at this. No. Let me take that back real quick. I'm going to take a step back. He will be traded, but it's not going to be right now, and it will not be this offseason. Something happened yesterday that I think really kind of puts things into perspective as to maybe why the Nationals did not trade him. But still, I think it's wrong. I'll tell you why after this. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life, and this year TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hang things off and move on with your day. And with TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish without the stress or guesswork. And instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit turbotax.com/local to book your appointment today. We're back here on Locked On Nationals, and I want to get into a MacKenzie Gore discussion as he has been the number one story of this offseason when it comes to baseball stuff and on-field stuff. And I think that about 2 months ago, I was talking about a MacKenzie Gore trade every day, and I was saying it's going to be imminent, and he will be traded. And now it's January 22nd. Players are reporting in just a few weeks. You've got spring training games, and I believe less than a month at this point, and you'll see MacKenzie Gore pitching for the Nationals in those games. He will not be traded. I'm convinced of it. In fact, I am 100% sure of it. I will put $5 on it with anybody out there, but I seriously will not. I'm going to tell you why they won't be trading MacKenzie Gore this offseason, but also tell you why I think it's a mistake. But of course, need to tell you about the Everydayer Club. And you can tell that all of you guys are the best listeners out there. And thank you for making Locked On Nationals your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in America. And if you have not already, go check out our new Everydayer Club, because number one, you get to do an access to an ad-free feed for Locked On Nationals compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course, even every other major podcast app. And of course, there is. And if you hit the link in my bio, you get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. And yes, you can go to Locked On Nationals or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. Again, check out my show notes down in the link here and hit that button now. But I want to get into a MacKenzie Gore discussion because obviously he has been the big name going around the sports world today, and or at least here in DC, not the big name going around the sports world today, but the New York Mets just traded for Freddie Peralta, a really good right-handed pitcher, all-star caliber player. I think the Mets did really well in that trade, and obviously they've had themselves a very good offseason in my mind. And I think that with where Peralta stands, like he's going to be a free agent after this year. We'll see if the Mets get a deal done with him as a long-term deal. I feel like would be imminent with them, but they trade for him. They give up 2 of their top 5 guys, but even then, it's not even like they're top guys, in my opinion. They didn't give up Jonah Tong, who I really like, and they did not give up Nolan McLean. And I think that with where the Nationals are today, like you look at that deal, Freddie Peralta is a better player than MacKenzie Gore right now. And yes, he is older. He's 29 years old, and he only has 1 year left on his deal, but he is the better pitcher. Like, he is a legit frontline ace today. Like, there is no hoping and wish casting that this is someone who could be that down the road. He is that right now, and I think he will be a lot better with the New York Mets. The Nationals kind of messed up here, if we're just being honest. You should have gone into this offseason with a plan with MacKenzie Gore. And I feel as if the Nationals may have tried to trade him earlier on this winter, then things may have been different. I look at this as a missed opportunity for MacKenzie Gore at this point. I like Gore. I think he's a great player. I think he's a great pitcher. And I think that he has got a whole nother gear. And I think that guy is going to get paid a ton of money when he's a free agent in 2 years. But the Nationals, and for what they need today, you have to get the best prospects in this building. And some people may look at that and say, well, you have got not a great pitching staff already, and you're willing to trade your all-star pitcher. Make that make sense. How does that make the Nationals better? Well, it's about getting value in return, whether it be someone helping your pitching staff, whether it's a first baseman down the road, whether it's a couple of different prospects that could help you in a year or two. It doesn't matter. You need to get value. And the problem with this non-deal, in my opinion, is that the Nationals will not get a better value for MacKenzie Gore than what it is right now. Here is my big concern about this trade, is that the Nationals front office looks at this and says, well, we think MacKenzie Gore is worth more than what we are trying to get on the market today. Like, we think MacKenzie Gore is this next big thing, and we think he's an ace, and we think that we should get a huge return for this guy. While they could be correct, and you know what? That's a gamble that it feels like right now they are willing to take. I'm not willing to take that gamble. Like, I am not willing to put all my chips on the table when it comes to this move. Because number one, I have seen this. I have read this book before. Scott Boras clients leave. They are gone. They go in free agency, and they'll get a massive $300 million contract, whether it be the Philadelphia Phillies or the New York Mets. Doesn't matter. They're going to leave to some NL East team. That's number one. And number two, you don't get value back in return for guys like Bryce Harper, for Anthony Rendon, and Trey Turner. I guess you did back in 2021, but still, I think you probably could have done a lot better than what they did back at that year's trade deadline. The Nationals have to kind of think forward here. And I'm a little confused as to why the Nationals are deciding to hold on to him now. And if you think, let's even say this, if you are really confused by the value, and I'm talking about the Nationals front office here, like if you don't think that you are getting the value now, you have to think to yourself this. Is the value going to be better at this year's deadline if everything goes correctly? Or with a half year off, will it be a little bit less than what you expected? Will it be more? Or even then, we haven't even talked about a realistic possibility that happens to any major league player. What if he gets hurt in the first half? Then you've got no trade value. And the plan to trade him down the road is out the window. The risk is not worth the reward when it comes to losing MacKenzie Gore. You should probably take the best offer on the table. But looking at what the New York Mets got for Freddie Peralta, or what the Brewers got for Freddie Peralta, I think that gives you a good general idea of what the returns kind of have been for MacKenzie Gore. I think Peralta is a better pitcher right now than MacKenzie Gore. And, you know, they got two good prospects, Brandon Sproat and Jet Williams, who I really like. I like both those prospects. I think Sproat could be a good and quality major league pitcher. I don't think he's going to be some massive difference maker for the Brewers down the road. I think Jet Williams will be okay, but honestly, I bet the Brewers probably trade him again. Like, that's kind of the way that they do it. I don't think they're going to be utilizing him as one of their top guys. I just am baffled. Not baffled. Maybe that's a little kind of exaggerating the point here a little bit. But I find myself confused with this whole decision process to go in and not trade Gore this offseason. I feel like it helps the team long-term, number one. And I also think it could help the team in the short term, depending on what you get back in return. Like, if you get back a Jet Williams and a Brandon Sproat, okay, you've got a number 3 starter moving forward, and you got someone who could be potentially a really good middle infielder moving forward, who's got good offensive tools there. And those are guys that help you today. A second baseman to compete with Luis Garcia. Maybe you play with the food with him and trade him down the road, or maybe you do something with Abrams. I don't know. But you have got an answer now, and you have got some competition. And most importantly, you've got young, cheap talent for the next 5, 6, 7 years that could obviously help you in a big way. So the process as to where the Nationals got here, as far as not trading MacKenzie Gore, I'm confused by it. And I think that a lot of people probably are as well, and probably should be, because I think the decision to hold on to him is a very risky one. And if it comes to July 31st of 2026 and the Nationals trade MacKenzie Gore and he's got a low 3 ERA and he is crushing it, he's leading Major League Baseball in strikeouts, I'll be the first one to say that I'm wrong. But also, this is a risk that I'm not willing to take. And that's what it comes down to for how I feel about the Nationals deciding, ultimately, most likely not trading MacKenzie Gore at this time. That's the way that I feel. Let me know what you think. But next, I do think the Nationals trade MacKenzie Gore. If not this year, definitely next year. And I've got a couple of teams in mind I think could make sense. So I'll tell you exactly who those teams are after this. And yes, we are Locked On Nationals, and thank you all for making us your first listen every single day. So we just talked about the Nationals not trading MacKenzie Gore. Now let me talk about trading MacKenzie Gore and the teams that I think will make the most sense to trade for MacKenzie Gore, not in the offseason, but in the middle of this season. And this is the way that it looks right now. My number one team is still the New York Yankees. I think the Yankees, they just signed Cody Bellinger to a pretty solid deal yesterday. I believe a 5-6 year deal around $150 million. That's kind of their big offseason move. And the Yankees, they've kind of had a quiet offseason for the most part. That does not happen too much with the Steinbrenners, but I expect them at some point this year to be in the middle of the wild card race. They're going to need some more pitching. And I could easily see them being the front runner to land in MacKenzie Gore. And I really like that fit, actually, with the Yankees when it comes to Gore. I think of him and I'm like, you know what? I could see him in a Yankees hat. I could see him in the pinstripes in the Bronx and pitching in front of big crowds every single night. I could see that for MacKenzie Gore. I think that he might be good in that environment. I mean, I've always thought that he's the big game pitcher that the Nationals have always needed. And I think he's kind of got a steady heart rate. He does get a little too amped sometimes, similar to Max Scherzer, but I think as he's gotten older, he's really kind of just honed down a little bit on his craft. And I think that he is obviously someone who could be seen as a big game player. So looking at him, he's an obvious answer. And for the Yankees, I think they're a clear front runner for MacKenzie Gore if they were to trade him in the middle of the season, which I think they will. My number two team is Milwaukee Brewers. I think that right now, today, the Brewers are actually a really good fit as well as the Yankees, especially after trading away Freddie Peralta. But here's my big holdup. Like, everything aligns with a MacKenzie Gore deal, but they just traded away Freddie Peralta, who has 1 year left on his deal and who, in my opinion, is a better pitcher today. Are you going to trade for someone like a MacKenzie Gore to have him for a year and just to trade him away? Or do you think MacKenzie Gore gets you over the hump? I don't really think that's the case. And I think that would be a pretty backwards way to think if you are the Brewers front office. So while it looks to be like a slam dunk, like MacKenzie Gore would be great in Milwaukee, a small market team that is heavy on analytics, that could dive into his stuff, figure it out, get his walk rate down, get his strikeout rate even higher than what it already is, and really take advantage of one of the game's nastiest left-handed pitchers in baseball, it makes sense. But then you think about the contract and what he's going to be due. And the Brewers, respectfully, they're not going to be the ones to sign him in free agency. It's going to be a team that's willing to give out maybe $250 to maybe even $300 million, depending the way that he pitches over the next 2 years. So that's the way that I think about MacKenzie Gore and the Brewers. But last but not least, the San Francisco Giants. I think they still have yet to find that Blake Snell replacement, and MacKenzie Gore could easily be that guy, and they're going to be in the thick of it. They're going for it this offseason with Buster Posey, the president of baseball ops in San Francisco. I think that they'll certainly be in the mix for a starting pitcher. I think that if they really want to get over that hump, they're going to have to make a major move in that starting pitcher market. And also, again, you can never have enough starting pitchers. So when you're talking about a team that's contending, they're going to be in on MacKenzie Gore. And I think that if MacKenzie Gore continues the way that he has been the last few years in the Detroit Tigers, they're not going to trade away Scooble. Gore could be the number one pitcher on the market come this trade deadline. And that could be a big win for the Washington Nationals and the way that they perceive this offseason. So thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen. I will catch you guys on the flip side on next week. Enjoy the snowstorm in DC. Have a good one. Go Nats.